Hello and welcome to this presentation on health and healing. This is the first in a series that is being brought to you by the Scott Valley Seventh-day Adventist Church. My name is Michael Hess. I'm the pastor here, and I'm also a medical doctor. I've been in practice since I graduated from medical school in 2000. In reaching out to our community, our church has been thinking about what can we do to help people at this time when so many people are afraid or discouraged because of the thing that's happening in the world right now. I'm not even going to mention the thing. You know what I'm talking about, I'm pretty sure. The thing that so many people are worried about right now. Some people are sick because of it, literally sick. Some people are dying. We want to bring you some useful and practical information that you can use to help yourself to be healthier and happier, and specifically right now to reduce your risk from the thing. So in this first episode, I'm going to introduce you to an acronym. It's called New Start. That stands for a bunch of things, and it's really a framework to help us think about how we can approach health and healing in a natural way. We'll get to all the elements of the acronym in just a minute, but first I want to be clear about something. We're not opposed to scientific methods or modern medicine, and in fact in this series we're going to be delving more deeply into the science of health and looking at actual scientific studies, and I'll be putting links for those in the description, probably down below or something like that. So look for those if you want to see the actual studies that I'm going to be referencing. So we're not opposed to modern medicine or even pharmaceutical interventions for treating disease or preventing disease in some cases, but it's important to recognize that no matter how safe or effective modern medical interventions might be at reducing symptoms or treating disease, those things will never actually make us healthy. Health comes from living in harmony with the way that our bodies are designed. So we can give you all sorts of pills to reduce your risk for complications of diabetes, complications from high blood pressure, complications from various infections and cancers and all sorts of things. But really, all of those medicines don't actually make you healthy and happy and fit and strong and able to do all the things that bring joy to your life and contribute to your community. So in this series of presentations, we're going to be focusing on the natural things that we can do, mostly natural. We'll talk about that in one of our episodes. We'll talk about a way of thinking about what's natural, what's not, and how do we decide and why does it matter. But for right now, I just want to be very clear. We're not advocating for or against any of the things that are out there. You need to, if you have questions about that, feel free. I mean, you could put questions in the comments below, but really you need to discuss those particular questions about pharmaceutical treatments with your provider. So we're going to be focusing on the science about what we can do naturally to improve our health and wellness. Are we clear on that? Okay. So let's get started. The acronym is New Start. That stands for 8 different things that taken together comprise a very whole picture of the things that help us to be healthy. And so New Start stands for NEW, nutrition, exercise, water, and START, START, that is sunlight, temperance, air, rest, and trust in God. So with regard to, I just want to go through this list with you. I'll make a few general comments about it, but mostly today it's just kind of an introduction to this acronym, and I'm going to quickly review a few studies specifically with regard to the thing that show how these 8 things relate to our risk and our health with regard to that thing. Okay? So first of all, nutrition. Of course, we all know that what we eat has a major impact on our overall health, and there's been so much research on this over the years in so many different ways. We could have a year's worth of episodes just on nutrition, but for today we're just focusing on this one thing. And so there was a large study that was done where dietary information was collected from a large sample of people over a period of time. They reported what they ate. And then when this thing started, this data was collected and aggregated with information about the people in the study who got the thing and how it affected them. And what they found was, in general, the more plant-based the diet was, the lower the risk of severe complications due to the thing. So, for example, people who ate less red meat but ate fish had a 59% reduction in risk of severe complications due to the thing. And people who were on a completely plant-based diet had a 73% reduction in risk of severe disease. That's pretty significant. That's on par with some of the other pharmaceutical things out there that are currently being pushed and mandated and everything like that. 73% reduction in the risk of complications from the thing. Said the opposite way, one of the comparisons that was made in the study was comparing people on a plant-based diet versus people on a low-carb, high-protein diet. And these low-carb, high-protein diets have been popular for a number of years. We'll talk more about those in another episode, but in this particular study, what they found was that the people on the low-carb, high-protein diet were 355% more likely to have severe complications and a severe case of the thing versus people on a plant-based diet. So for right now, I'm just going to recommend for you, everybody listening, eat your fruits and vegetables. The more fruits and vegetables you get, the more nutritional value you have, higher levels of vitamins and minerals in general, and specifically antioxidants and other phytonutrients that boost the immune system and fight cancer and infections. So that's the first one, nutrition. Secondly, exercise. Now, I know what you're saying, exercise. It's hard to exercise. Who has time for all that? Well, you already know that there's a large amount of evidence that exercise helps with overall health. And I'm sure you've even felt it yourself in the past when you've exercised, when you have a good workout, you just feel more relaxed, you feel more at peace, you feel better. Actually, when you're on a regular exercise program, you feel more energetic. And so it's interesting that the Institute of Medicine, a number of different bodies of experts are now recommending a minimum of 150 minutes a week of moderately vigorous physical exercise. 150 minutes a week. That's 30 minutes 5 times a week. So you could take weekends off, or you could exercise more on weekends and less during the week. But anyway, this particular study also this one was in the British Medical Journal, found that there was a direct correlation with exercise and the risk of the thing, an inverse relationship. So what that means is the risk of death for people who got that 150 minutes a week was found to be 0.02%. For those who did not exercise regularly, it was 0.08%. So that's 4 times higher risk of dying from the thing if you don't exercise versus if you do. Another way of saying it, one of the particular details that they found was people who did not exercise were 26% more likely to be hospitalized because of the thing. So I think that's a pretty good use of 30 minutes a day to do something that makes you feel better and also reduces your risk of dying from that thing. So nutrition, exercise, water. Now here I didn't find any controlled trials looking at the use of water and the risk of the thing, but I did find some articles and recommendations. And in fact, there was one article published by the National Institutes of Health where the author hypothesized that being chronically underhydrated would elevate the risk for the thing. And they gave a number of mechanisms and theories about why that would be and called for someone to do a controlled trial. I couldn't find any actual controlled trial results. If you're aware of some, please comment, put that in the comments down below, and I'll comment on it another time. But there's good reason to make sure that you're being adequately hydrated. And the best way that I've found for average person to know if you're well hydrated is to actually check your urine, and it should be clear most of the time. Now, of course, first time in the morning, it's going to be probably a little darker yellow or something like that, but as the day goes on, you start drinking water and hydrating, it should be clear most of the time. And the only caveats to that is if you have any kind of medical condition that affects your heart, like congestive heart failure, or if you have kidney failure, you need to talk with your medical specialist about that. But for all the rest of us that are of average health or better, we really need to be hydrating adequately to keep that urine clear most of the time. The second thing with water is what we call hydrotherapy, and it is using water to do therapeutic treatments to manipulate our metabolism, our body in some way. And the traditional name for this is hydrotherapy. And water is mainly used in hydrotherapy to transfer heat. So you probably are familiar with the concept of a sauna. And so the idea is you get in the sauna, you raise your body temperature, and then you pour that ice bucket on you, or you jump in the river or the fjord and then get back in the sauna. Or you can do this in your own home, and there'll be instructions. I'm going to provide instructions for how to do this, and hopefully you can find a download link somewhere around here. The idea, though, is that this contrast of heat that raises our body temperature a little bit, and then cold, which provides a contrast, kind of shocks the system a little bit, and several cycles of that actually improves our circulation, it improves our skin tone, but it also raises our white blood cell count and activates the immune system that helps to fight infection of all kinds. And so there has been at least one paper published. This was not a study. Again, it was a suggestion for a study suggesting that due to what we know about hydrotherapy, it's likely to reduce the risk of the thing as well as other infections. And so that's something to consider. All right, nutrition, exercise, water. So new, start, START, sunlight. Now, sunlight is related to this thing in a couple of different ways. As you probably know, sunlight, ultraviolet light in particular, kills germs. So if you want to reduce your risk from germs, get more sunlight. Exposing your body, your house, your environment to more sunlight is going to be helpful. There was a fairly large study done that actually correlated sunlight, increased amount of sunlight with reduced risk for the thing. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find all the data to look at that to get specific numbers. I will put a link here for you to go find that information if you can find it yourself. But just know that sun exposure is an important part of reducing risk from particularly viral infections, but other types of infections as well. And sunlight is such a powerful thing, and there's so much to say about it. We'll go into much greater depth on that later. But for now, just realize sunlight's important, and it's linked to vitamin D. And so this kind of loops back to nutrition, but there was one study that I found that showed people who supplement vitamin D had a 34% lower risk of catching the thing. that was kind of interesting. So vitamin D supplement, you can supplement your vitamin D by getting more sun exposure, but of course be careful not to get sunburn because that increases your risk for melanoma, which is not good. So we'll talk more about sunlight later. Temperance. So temperance is an old-fashioned word. It just means basically abstaining from things that are bad for you and using the things that are good for you in moderation and in proper balance. So there are a lot of issues with substance use and the risk of the thing. And I'm just going to go through these very quickly. A large study published by the National Institutes of Health found that smoking causes 73% increased risk of admission, 58% higher risk of death, and heavy smokers had an 89% increase in their risk of dying due to the thing compared to non-smokers. That one's not surprising at all. This one may be a little more surprising. There was a fairly large study done looking at alcohol consumption and the risk for complications of the thing. And they looked specifically at what we call acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is where your lungs are not functioning well and there's a lot of fluid buildup and other bad stuff happening in the lungs that reduces your ability to breathe and get oxygen in and get other things out. So they found that high consumption of alcohol increased the risk of infection with the thing by 2.34 times. And this was really interesting. They did an analysis and they broke it down by how much people actually drank. And they found that for the average, and if I understood this correctly, 1 drink per week on average increased the risk of acute respiratory distress syndrome by 6% if you have the thing. So that would add up. So every additional drink that you drink on a average week increases your risk for this severe pulmonary complication of the thing by 6%. That was kind of a surprise to me. I didn't realize there was that much of a correlation. And then of course other substance use disorders in general, there's a different study where they found 8 times the risk of 8 times the risk of infection with the thing for people who had any type of substance use disorder. And for opioids, it was 10 times the risk. And marijuana. So a lot of people think marijuana is natural, so it's safe, but marijuana was found to increase the risk of infection 6 times versus people who did not use. All right, so that's temperance. Next, so that's STA, that was air. Air is next. Of course, air, we were just talking about air, right? Smoking and breathing has to do with air. I did not find any controlled trials about breathing and COVID other than, like we all know, if you don't breathe, that's not good. Oh, I said the word, didn't I? Oh, that thing. Anyway, breathing is important. So I did find a study about the importance of nasal breathing versus mouth breathing. And there's a number of studies on that. It turns out that if you breathe through your nose, it's better for your lungs, and it increases nitric oxide, which has been shown to kill the thing. So, practice deep breathing through your nose. Again, not a controlled trial, but some pretty basic science that moves us in that direction. Okay, R is for rest. This one, there was actually a pretty good study on this, looking at doctors and nurses taking care of people in the hospital who have the thing. And what they found was that doctors who did not sleep were at higher risk versus doctors who got adequate sleep. And they broke this down to every extra hour of sleep reduced the risk of the thing by 12%. So that doesn't mean you should sleep all day, but really look at getting that 7 to 9 hours of sleep on most nights. That's going to provide you with significant protection. Okay, that's it for the studies. The last one, trust in divine power. I did not find any controlled trials on that, but I do just want to share with you from my personal experience on that. And that is, from the very beginning of this whole thing, we have seen fear, anxiety. Many of you have perhaps experienced it, and it is kind of, it's a big deal. All of us know, probably at this point, know someone who has passed away because of the thing. Most of us know people who have been very sick. Many of us know a lot of people who've been sick and recovered, and all of us have been affected by the lockdowns and all of the things going along with this. But I want to tell you, for myself personally, from the very beginning, when we first started experiencing lockdowns, there was a lot of uncertainty what was happening. We didn't know exactly what sort of PPE we should be wearing. We didn't know how exactly this was transmitted. We didn't know what the fatality rate was. We just knew it was a really bad thing and everything was shut down. Right from the beginning, I felt peace because of knowing that God is in control of this world and that I have a relationship with God that allows me to trust in Him. And I can't say that I know for certain that I won't die from the thing or that my family won't be affected by it. We might be, but I do know that I have peace in my heart and mind, and I know that regardless of what happens through all the chaos of what's happening in the world right now, God has a plan, and He's working this out, and somehow through all of this, He's going to bring about good things in our lives, and ultimately bring about good in the world. And of course, that gets beyond the scope of science. Now we're talking religion. But I can tell you that I have had this peace, and I have other friends and family members who are the same way. We experience the peace of God, knowing that we're going to be okay through the midst of all of this. And that's a powerful thing. I think I even had a friend of mine who was telling me about a family member of his that had the thing and was in the hospital, and he said that the worst part of it was the depression, because he was afraid he was going to die, and he was depressed because of it. And I just want to let you know that if you have trust in God and you have a relationship with God, you can have peace in the midst of this. Even if you get the thing, you can still be at peace with God. And that is something that money can't buy, and you can't find that in any kind of pill or pharmaceutical treatment either. All right, so that's the New Start acronym. We'll go in much more depth in future installments, small pieces of that. I also want to give you a handout that I put together for my patients on how to protect themselves in a natural way to reduce their risk for the thing, not just the thing, but actually for any kind of upper respiratory infection. So there should be a link for someplace you can download that, hopefully in the description below. And speaking of that, if you have found this presentation to be helpful or interesting, please like, share it with your friends, subscribe, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications so that you'll be notified when our next episode is available. We're planning that next week and planning to go into more detail on nutrition. Until then, be safe, be well, may the peace of God fill your mind and His love fill your heart, and God bless you, my friends.